Imagine a secret whispered behind the mountains, echoing across the seas. Chosen one, no one can openly pronounce your power over this world. Your name is now spoken in code, over secret meetings, over tables behind closed doors. Even the leaders of the G7 use passwords to speak of your influence, because they know that your destiny changes not only your life, but also the course of the global order. You are at a point where not everyone dares to say your name out loud. This is the sign of true power. Your light is creating vibrations, even in veiled languages, even in hidden signs. Get ready, write 66 in the comments. The world is talking about your presence, and behind the scenes, the stones are moving for your name. Sometimes what's handed down isn't just an object or a deed, but a silent signal that calls out all the hidden adversaries hiding in plain sight. A legacy can be the match that lights the powder keg, causing every mask to slip and every secret hand to reach for what was never theirs to claim. In the thick of night, when fate seems to pause and the air grows heavy with unseen movement, a whisper comes, a warning, a revelation, or a plea. Someone, once considered unshakable, now faces consequences that mirror every scheme they tried to set in motion. The very inheritance once destined to be a blessing became a beacon, attracting every shadowy ambition and every greedy eye from corners far and near. Not merely a parcel of land or a collection of heirlooms, but a key that could open vaults of old grudges and generations of unspoken jealousy. It was enough to drive alliances of the cunning and desperate into action, crossing borders and generations, and assembling networks whose roots had twisted together over years of silent plotting. The chain reaction wasn't an accident. Every choice, every handshake made in secret was a step toward a reckoning built over years of patient deceit. Hidden motives disguised as concern began to unravel. The ones once trusted to safeguard life's details became observers, cataloging every stumble and hesitation as evidence. Meals, once served as tokens of care, now arrived under the shadow of suspicion. Everyday questions about paperwork, once innocent, now revealed as a probe into defenses and vulnerabilities. In the wake of the unfolding plan, the truth about alliances and intentions slowly began to surface, a mosaic of betrayal and ambition camouflaged as ordinary life. As the days passed, confusion grew, fatigue, inexplicable fears, and memories slipping away. These were not accidents, but carefully engineered obstacles laid out by those who sought to erase any trace of resistance. Behind closed doors, phones rang and coded messages traveled through secure lines. Legal counsel with checkered histories was engaged, financial movements traced through tangled webs, and those skilled in ancient methods were consulted to rewrite destinies from afar. The machinery of sabotage was set in motion, all while the outside world saw only everyday struggles and routine setbacks. There was a singular purpose: leave no clear trail, create just enough doubt, and make the world believe that the fall was a result of weakness, not a storm unleashed by greed. The momentum built on several fronts at once. In distant lands, messengers were sent to invoke rituals meant to cut spiritual ties and weaken protective lines. At home, subtle poisons crept into daily routines. Words of manipulation gnawed at self-confidence, and doubt became a steady companion. Government eyes followed electronic trails and suspicious transfers, piecing together the fragments of a crime that spanned continents. The careful strategy became a rush, the need to act quickly intensified by new protections awakening from within the targeted bloodline, a force no one had expected. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Desperation led to risky bargains. Deals were struck with those promising to rewrite the script of destiny, to move lifelines from one vessel to another, as if fate could be traded like property. These were not local hands, but foreign experts, demanding steep prices and guarantees that their own power would not be threatened if the scheme failed. As money flowed across borders and intentions darkened, distant authorities began to notice the patterns. Surveillance widened, and more eyes began to watch the players move. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. Final preparations meant new rituals at family tombs, old homes, places saturated with history and memory. Every attempt to break the unseen bonds protecting this legacy met resistance, fiercer than anticipated. Protections forged through centuries, agreements inked by ancestors who foresaw dangers beyond their own lifetimes. The Force Awakened was not just a shield, but a living legacy that responded with swift and decisive action. What began as a plot to dispossess turned into a gauntlet, exposing the architects to consequences greater than anything they had conjured. Forces long asleep beneath the foundation of your lineage began to rise in the hour of your greatest need. Imagine ancient guardians, not as silent statues, but as silent sentinels, springing to life when darkness creeps too close to home. Their intervention wasn't a mere shield. It was a tidal wave, precise as a surgeon's scalpel and relentless as a rising flood. Those who dared to tamper with your path, calling on forbidden arts and forbidden hands from distant lands, found their own health and fortune unraveling almost overnight. Illnesses appeared with no known cause. Journeys meant to deliver triumph ended in swift retreat. These warning shots were only the beginning. What was meant to be a secret campaign against you was suddenly the catalyst for their undoing, coinciding perfectly with the moment authorities started connecting dots across years and continents, seeing in your ordeal the missing link that had eluded them. Meanwhile, those intent on your ruin had reached a fever pitch. Plots that had simmered for months now boiled over. Final documents shuffled in legal offices, substances measured and weighed, secret rites whispered in rooms thick with expectation. Across the globe, those who'd sworn allegiance to dark alliances began to falter. Some abandoned their posts, others suffered immediate consequences. It was as if the very air had turned on them. Your inner senses surged to new clarity, revealing each thread in the plot with uncanny detail. Security grew tighter, conversations were watched, paper trails scrutinized. In the background, investigators assembled the case that would topple the entire apparatus, exposing a network with a history of snuffed-out heirs and fortunes funneled to the same dark hands. Unbeknownst to many, the very resource intended to rob you of your future became the beacon drawing scrutiny and justice to their door. That inheritance, meant as a snare for you, instead lured every secret adversary out of their hiding places and into the light. Retribution, both spiritual and legal, hovered at the threshold. What once seemed a curse was revealed as a divine chess move, a checkmate designed before you ever knew the game had begun. And in this moment, a word must be offered for those who live outside the world's template, the misfits and the visionaries who move through life guided by instincts others can't fathom. They are the night's quiet watchmen, the souls who tread unbeaten trails, who resist the easy way and answer only to the call within. Whether or not they're seen, they shape the field for all who come after, and in gatherings of spirit, their wisdom becomes the torch lighting hidden corridors. If that fire burns in you, then you've found your kin. If not, the path is still honored, because guardians watch whether or not they are acknowledged, and the silent service of the true ones changes the world in ways that never make headlines. To those who stand apart, not for applause, but because their soul demands it, this light is for you. As adversaries pressed in, the very bones of your ancestry rallied to your defense. Dreams arrived that felt more like encoded warnings than random stories. Each bite of food was tested by intuition before being trusted. The masks of false friends slipped, their intentions leaking through the cracks for anyone wise enough to see. Even confessions and critical evidence began to surface in rapid succession. Justice, both mystical and material, closed in from all sides. You responded with discernment that bordered on the miraculous. Gut feelings became instruction. Recordings and notes replaced doubts and hesitation. Patterns revealed themselves, and the would-be manipulators saw the trap closing with every move. They tried to outpace the awakening, accelerating plans in a panic, but their rush only tripped more alarms and left more fingerprints. With every desperate push, the web unraveled faster. The final acts, their last hope for victory, became the loudest signals to the authorities now waiting in the wings. The tide didn't just turn, it thundered back with interest. The reversal was absolute. What began as an assault ended in a showcase of justice and revelation, with you at the center, not as a victim, but as the spark that made centuries of darkness visible and vulnerable for the first time. Meanwhile, the authorities, once only vaguely aware of distant tremors, now moved with precision and purpose. Their files were no longer cold. They drew maps of interconnections, following the trails of hidden bank accounts, shadowy real estate, and confidential deals that no longer held up under scrutiny. As their plans for coordinated justice neared, those who trafficked in manipulation and ritual found their world shrinking. Suddenly, partnerships frayed, fortunes dissolved in a blink, and once untouchable professionals watched the foundations of their lives fall out from beneath them. Medical emergencies, unexpected lawsuits, and disasters both natural and human-made tore through the ranks of the guilty. Even those who tried to run found that the storm followed them, crossing borders and breaching walls that once felt impenetrable. The domino effect swept through communities and systems. The fraudsters' influence collapsed. New leaders and laws emerged to prevent future abuses. What once looked like chaos revealed itself as the meticulous correction of a cosmic ledger, where every loss was restored tenfold. The institutions that ignored your warnings now sought your counsel. The very professionals who conspired against you watched as their own reputations withered in the glare of truth. Banks rewrote policies, doctors lost licenses, and the machinery of justice moved with a force that could no longer be resisted. In the wake of this reversal, the landscape was forever changed. Where sorrow once grew, there flourished possibility. The names of those who tried to cut short your promise faded into footnotes, while your story became a living testimony to what it means to rise, to transform, and to overcome. Your triumph wasn't just survival. It was restoration, expansion, and the forging of an eternal promise that those who stand for what is right will never be left without a harvest. And as your reputation, once tarnished, began to shine brighter than ever, the world took note, not of your pain, but of the victory that could never be denied. Some victories don't just rewrite a chapter, they reset the entire story, redrawing the lines of fate for generations to come. Imagine a tree that has withstood centuries of storms, its roots now so deep that not even the fiercest winds can dislodge it. That's what your legacy has become, an unshakable monument rising from the ashes of sabotage, while the schemes that threatened it crumble into dust. Where once the architects of chaos boasted about their invincibility, now they scurry for shelter as the very people they lured into their plots begin to flee, wanting nothing to do with the coming accountability. The sight of your resilience is sending shockwaves through their ranks, making even former allies re-evaluate their loyalty and distance themselves from what's been exposed. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. What's more, the gifts that developed under pressure have become beacons for those still navigating their own storms. Your insight into subtle energies, your ability to sense hidden agendas or unseen sabotage, is opening doors for collaboration with leaders and protectors who once scoffed at anything outside the ordinary. No longer are spiritual threats brushed off as fantasy. Now your very presence in a courtroom or consultation brings a weight that tips the scales. The inheritance that once felt like a burden or even a trap has become a wellspring, fueling projects that protect, shelter, and educate. What was meant to isolate you has built bridges to others who need refuge from the same dangers you overcame. This isn't just personal triumph, it's a transformation of the landscape. Imagine rain falling on parched ground, making dormant seeds burst to life all at once. As you rise, entire networks of predatory power shrivel. Every lawsuit, every protocol, every task force that forms does so because your case ripped the veil off hidden machinations. Each verdict reached, each settlement awarded, sends another message to those plotting in shadows. Their time is over, and the era of transparency is here. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. For those who thought their misdeeds would go unnoticed, the irony is searing. Investigations that once seemed disconnected now reveal their tangled roots, and one by one, similar groups and criminal webs are pulled into the daylight. What began with a single act of betrayal now catalyzes reforms and reopens cases across cities and states, freeing families from the unspoken pain that had haunted them for years. Training programs, educational platforms, and survivor networks spring up, all seeded by the testimony you were brave enough to give. Where there once was only confusion, now there's a roadmap for others to follow, a path out of darkness mapped by the very footsteps that were meant to destroy you. Your influence is now so woven into the fabric of change that entire systems are recalibrating. Financial watchdogs develop new algorithms based on patterns revealed in your saga. Medical licensing boards tighten regulations to root out those who conspire with harm. Not only have you forged a shield for yourself, you've extended it to strangers you'll never meet, protecting the vulnerable for generations to come. The guidance you offer, whether in court or in private, is now sought by officials who once dismissed the reality of the spiritual battlefield you endured. Perhaps the greatest twist of all is the revelation that the net your enemies cast was always meant to catch themselves. In pursuing you, they triggered their own undoing, never suspecting that their intricate web of greed and deception would collapse from the center out. The trap was never set for the innocent. It was set for those who could not see beyond their own ambition. Now, what was intended as your downfall stands as a monument to indestructible faith, a cosmic reversal so perfect in its symmetry that even the skeptics must admit a higher logic at work. In the aftermath, new alliances are formed. Alliances not built on shared secrecy or fear, but on purpose, transparency, and mutual protection. Your story becomes required reading, a case study for law schools and spiritual communities alike. The language of inheritance and legacy is redefined to include not just property, but wisdom, protection, and vision. Bloodlines once marked by trauma now carry the signature of resilience, and descendants inherit not just material wealth, but supernatural safeguards that will endure long after today's adversaries are forgotten. Now, when someone raises the alarm about hidden plots or invisible attacks, they're taken seriously because your experience rewrote what is possible. Investigators, families, and would-be victims have a template to follow. Programs appear in schools, churches, and online, teaching people to recognize manipulation before it can take root, and empowering the next generation with discernment and spiritual strength. The ripple of your victory becomes a tidal wave, and as it sweeps through culture and law, even the most entrenched networks of darkness find no refuge. The closing lesson, the one no adversary can dispute, is that real protection runs deeper than any scheme. The force that shielded you wasn't built overnight. It was forged by generations of unseen prayer, intention, and alignment with purpose. When your enemies looked for weakness, they found only layers of invisible armor. And when they tried to silence you, they unwittingly handed you a microphone that would broadcast your testimony to the world. Some legacies don't just lift you, they rewrite the rules for generations. Imagine a lighthouse built on the toughest cliff, standing unshaken as storms rage year after year. What's happened in your life is much like that. The turbulence and plots that once threatened you have been replaced by a radiant signal, shining out so far that entire systems adjust their course. Quietly, something astonishing is happening in the world around you. Training sessions unfold in government offices. Rooms once skeptical of anything unseen are now filled with agents and experts learning to read the currents that flow beneath ordinary events. New policies, new procedures, new eyes on old shadows, all of it emerging because of the storm you survived. The story isn't just about winning a fight or claiming some trophy. It's about becoming the reason others finally get the tools to fight back. Your rise forced whole industries to rethink what protection means. Insurance companies rewriting rules, banks building new safeguards, healers teaching fresh wisdom to those who never believed in invisible war. Lines that used to separate logic from faith, science from spirit, have blurred as old institutions acknowledge that darkness comes in many forms. No more hiding behind closed doors. Every shift, every new defense, springs from the moment you turn tragedy into a blueprint for others. But the greatest revelation is that the inheritance you received was never about gold or land. What you gained was an ancient test, a puzzle meant to reveal not what you owned, but who was worthy to stand beside you. Every plot against you was a sorting process, every betrayal an unveiling. The test was set long before you arrived, woven into the fabric of your ancestry like a secret code that only crisis could reveal. The truth was never about what you might lose, but about what you were destined to gain, an unbreakable sense of who deserves your trust. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially, far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord guide your path. It's almost poetic, the way fate can use greed to clean its own house. The ones who schemed against you set in motion their own unraveling. They exposed themselves as soon as they reached for what was not theirs, and every grasp tightened the snare around their own feet. You became the proving ground, but the lesson was theirs to learn. Too late. For every soul who remained loyal, blessings multiplied. For every deceiver unmasked, the story was written in stone. The roots of your story were always too deep for shallow hands to uproot. When you trace it back, you see it wasn't just chance, or even your resilience, that tipped the scales. It was the quiet choreography of something far greater, an intelligence that used the very ambition of your adversaries to map out their downfall. You may have felt like prey, but the net was never meant for you. Those who plotted, who manipulated, who moved with arrogance in the dark, simply followed the trail to their own reckoning. Their plans, crafted with calculation, became the evidence of their blindness. In the end, their downfall was self-inflicted, and the protection that covered you never faltered. Now, your journey stands as a testament for all to see, a monument that no force of sabotage can erode. People point to your story as proof. When the winds of adversity blow, those who stand rooted in purpose cannot be toppled. Your victory is not just a personal win. It is the living demonstration that some are called to walk paths the ordinary cannot see. And when the world comes against such a calling, it is the world, not the chosen, that will be shaken. No longer is spiritual defense dismissed as superstition. Your journey has made the invisible visible. What you survived has become a shield for others, a guidebook for those threatened by hidden schemes. People who once scoffed at the idea of spiritual sabotage now rewrite their own rules, watch their own backs, and stand up for what is right with renewed strength. Banks build new firewalls, hospitals train for integrity, and families who once lived in fear now find the courage to protect themselves. If you feel God's presence, you can tap the join button below to become part of the first chosen ones and receive the most important revelations early. What started as an attempt to take what was not earned has sparked a renaissance, a great awakening in how justice is done and how protection is understood. The most remarkable part is that the whole ordeal was never meant to break you. It was meant to reveal who could not stand beside you, to show the difference between allies and opportunists, to make sure your blessings would never be stolen by hands unfit to hold them. This is the true inheritance, not just security for your future, but a legacy that stretches forward and backward in time. Your name, your story, your courage, all now woven into the very definition of what it means to be protected. Descendants who come after you will find doors open and threats dissolved because of the path you blazed. Systems will remember your trial, your endurance, your revelation, and design themselves to keep others safe. As the last shadows fade, the world looks up and sees you were never the victim, never the easy target, never the vulnerable one. You were all along the example the universe needed to set.